Part 14. I'm Really Immortal. Author, Chulian Kuikan Rusiahua. Chapter 131. Lu Chang'an came back without breakfast. He bought some noodles when he passed by the vegetable market. No matter what happened, he always had breakfast. In primitive society, there was no concept of 3 meals a day. When hungry, people sought food, and when full, they discarded leftovers. After entering the agricultural civilization, rice and porridge have always been people's staple food. During the Qin and Han dynasties, the 2-meal system was adopted, and only in the Sui and Tang dynasties did 3 meals a day begin. Lu Chang'an was also a person who once had 4 meals a day during the Han dynasty. 4 meals a day was stipulated as the standard for imperial meals. This morning at Gao Dui's house, Lu Chang'an was originally going to use the abundant ingredients to make a meal of 8 delicacies noodles, but now he had to make 5 spice noodles when he returned home. When he got home, Zhu Huntang was having breakfast in front of his house. Naturally, she didn't have to do it herself like Lu Chang'an did. She only had to say I'm hungry and someone would naturally bring her meals and even tables and chairs. Zhou Dongdong also became Zhu Huntang's guest. Do you know how the child was taken away? Lu Chang'an said to Zhou Dongdong. The bad guy cheated him out of the food. Zhou Dongdong immediately showed an expression that he had been wary of this matter, and then took a bite of something that he didn't know what it was, but it was very delicious. I'm not a bad person, Zhu Huntang immediately said, dissatisfied. That's right, bad people will only give you a little good food, and good people will give you a lot of good food. Of course a smart kid like Zhou Dongdong can tell the difference between good people and bad people. For example, the bad guy who always comes to see Brother Chang'an, just a little yummy, didn't want to give it to Zhou Dongdong, and even wanted to take her away. You called me here early in the morning just to let me watch you eat breakfast, Lu Chang'an said to Zhu Huntang. No, am I hungry? Haha, plastic sisterhood, I heard you seemed quite anxious on the phone. Didn't you go shopping first? What did you buy when you came back? Lu Chang'an went to boil water by himself. In fact, he was also wondering what happened to Qin and that scared Zhu Huntang. Many things are scary when they first happen, but after a while, you wake up, or the environment changes, you no longer feel that fear. Judging from Zhu Huntang's reaction, it must have been that she was frightened, not that something terrible happened to Qin. In other words, Qin was probably fine, so Lu Chang'an would naturally not be anxious. Zhu Huntang had almost eaten. When she left Qin's apartment, the genius Meng Mengliang stayed in her car for a while. When she came to Lu Chang'an's place, she felt hungry. After eating breakfast, of course her mood was different from the original one. Qin and I went to bed very late last night. We talked for a while about things related to you, Zhu Huntang said while standing in front of Lu Chang'an. Zhu Huntang is wearing black high-heeled shoes, bare legs, and a dark purple skirt today. The skirt is extremely short and paired with pumpkin pants. She doesn't have to worry about being exposed, but it can make a girl who is not that tall have as long legs as possible. Tall. Standing in front of Lu Chang'an dressed like this, it kind of made him think that An Nuan was standing in front of him. Of course, when he looked carefully, the gap was quite big. An Nuan usually wore sports shoes or sneakers and canvas shoes, which was not the case at all. High heels required. Even if Lu Chang'an is growing taller quietly, if An Nuan wears high heels of this height and has to stand on tiptoe, Lu Chang'an will still grow taller. I didn't tell her the truth that you have superpowers and that you are an old man. Zhu Huntang lowered his voice and looked at Zhou Dongdong carefully. What do you think Zhou Dongdong is doing? Lu Chang'an continued to boil water. When she was eating, her mind went blank. Qin still thinks that you and your great-grandfather are 2 different people, Zhu Huntang continued. It's all nonsense. Lu Chang'an cooked the noodles until they were medium cooked, took them out under cold water, and then took 2 slices of ham to make soup. She also talked about how she went to the tailor shop to buy fabrics and took away her favorite color. Zhu Huntang pointed to the breakfast he brought. Don't do it. You can eat the breakfast I brought. Come on, listen to me. It's not hot anymore. I don't want to eat it. Lu Chang'an was not interested. He didn't have Zhou Dongdong's appetite, more or less, but he was more demanding. She also wants to see how the cheongsam you made looks on your little girlfriend. Zhu Huntang couldn't help but sneer. Qin Yan'an actually said that An Nuan is a little girl. Obviously both of them are like Beilong Center, so funny. It's unusual for a short man to laugh at a tall man. Lu Chang'an found it difficult to understand Zhu Huntang's inexplicable smile. I am 1.65 meters tall when I wake up in the morning, Zhu Huntang said angrily. At night, I am also 1.63 meters tall at night. Let's get to the point. Lu Chang'an was certainly not interested in Zhu Huntang's height. Qin Yan'an also made a cheongsam herself and just got it back from the store. I asked her to try it on for me, but she was still unwilling. She said she would wear it when she was in the mood. At this point, Zhu Huntang looked solemn. Lu Chang'an cooked the noodle soup, poured in the noodles, sauce, vinegar, minced pepper, and chopped sesame seeds, mixed well and started eating the noodles. Zhu Huntang sniffed and felt that it was particularly fragrant. However, as an elegant lady, controlling food intake is a sign of perseverance. No matter how delicious it is, you cannot eat until you are 70% full. But Zhou Dongdong was not an elegant lady, so he came over and looked at Lu Chang'an's bowl. Lu Chang'an shook his head and pointed to the bowl on the table. Zhou Dongdong quickly brought the bowl over, and Lu Chang'an shared some with her. I'm full. I'll watch first and then eat later. Zhou Dongdong put the bowls in place and sat motionless on the small bench. If he's full, he can still see what he wants to eat next. This is a child full of expectations. Listen to me. Zhu Huntang thought it was a terrible thing. After Zhou Dongdong walked away, he continued, do you know the result? I woke up in the middle of the night and found Qin Yan'an getting up. I called she ignored me. It's just sleepwalking. I also know about sleepwalking. But sleepwalking people can't wake up when they look at it, but she is different. It's like a ghost possessing the body and possessing the body. Zhu Huntang's mood returned to last night, and his expression became nervous. I think you should read more books, but why don't you read more fantasy novels and possess people? Why don't you talk about rebirth with a system or something? Lu Chang'an reads all books. That's because he has read enough books, but he has not read a few serious knowledge books like Zhu Huntang, and only reads entertainment-oriented novels. What's the use? Listen to me. If it's just sleepwalking, can I be frightened like this? Zhu Huntang recalled the situation last night. I have already asked my doctor, and she said that sleepwalkers generally have half eyes. Open or fully open. Qin Yan'an is indeed like this, but generally sleepwalking people don't seem to be seeing anything when their eyes are opened. Qin Yan'an's eyes are moving, just like normal people. Then how do you know she's not awake? I was talking to her, and she ignored me completely, as if I didn't exist. Is this normal? Then after she got out of bed, she took off her pajamas, put on her underwear, and then went to get the cheongsam. Come out and change it? Isn't this scary? Zhu Huntang slowly shook his head. What's scary is that she stood in front of the mirror and looked at herself, stretched out her hand to touch the mirror, and then seemed to come back to herself, as if she felt that she was not an illusory shadow in the mirror, but it was like a real person, showing a very relaxed smile, as if a serious illness was finally cured. But do you know how weird it looked to me at the time? It's a bit weird. Lu Chang'an nodded and continued eating noodles. The next thing is even weirder. She looked at herself in the mirror, started singing, and sang Rose Rose I Love You. This song is a classic. It was adapted into English and hit the charts of that era. Lu Chang'an finished eating the noodles and looked at Zhu Huntang thoughtfully. This is indeed very unusual. The point is, she doesn't look like Qin Yanan anymore. Her expression, her temperament, her smile, and the little movements of her eyebrows, eyes, and mouth, nothing is exactly the same as the Qin Yanan I'm familiar with. Zhu Huntang squatting in front of Lu Chang'an, pressing Lu Chang'an's knees with both hands, eyes wide open, she looks like Ye Sijin. Lu Chang'an's eyes were sharp and he immediately restrained himself. I've seen the photos in Mr. Qin's study, and I'm very impressed. Anyway, Qin Yanan last night was like Ye Sijin who had traveled through time before he died in that era, or maybe I traveled through time and saw her with my own eyes. Looks like that. Zhu Huntang patted his chest. I'm here fine and fine, so, could it be that Qin Yanan has been possessed by Ye Sijin through time? Where is Qin Yanan now? Lu Chang'an would not accept Zhu Huntang's conjecture. He had to analyze and demonstrate it himself. After she finished singing, she looked at herself in the mirror for a while, then took off her cheongsam again, changed into her pajamas, and went to sleep honestly. How could I still sleep? I stayed with her for a while, and then I ran away at dawn. I sent a text message just now to test her, and she seems to have no idea what happened last night, and she should be in her apartment now. Let's go take a look. Sorry, this is the first update today. I feel uncomfortable in my stomach from eating too much. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 132. The summer wind blows through the sycamore leaves, the sun is in the east, but there is another kind of light called happiness when you are full shining under the tree. In Lu Chang'an's eyes, it was a stupid light. In Zhu Huntang's eyes, the light of a fairy shrouds believers. Everyone looks at the problem from a different angle, thinks differently, has different logical abilities, and draws a variety of conclusions. Lu Chang'an cannot start making inferences just based on Zhu Huntang's description. It is very possible that Zhu Huntang is adding fuel to the fire. After all, he is a patient with severe delusions who thinks he is a fairy all day long. He takes the elevator downstairs and thinks he is descending to earth. The sleepwalking symptoms of getting up and changing clothes are very likely real, and even singing is real, but Qin Yanan sleepwalking is nothing to make a fuss about. She looks like Ye Sijin when she sleepwalks, which is the most worthy of attention. But this point comes purely from Zhu Huntang's subjective feelings. Zhu Huntang has only seen photos of Ye Sijin. People who are sleepwalking certainly don't look like they usually do. Coupled with Zhu Huntang's strong subjective bias, she can only listen to the conclusions she draws. What do you think this is all about? Faced with Zhu Huntang's question, Lu Chang'an couldn't answer it. What if she really becomes Ye Sijin? Zhu Huntang was still worried. This is a somewhat meaningful question, since the birth of mankind, there have always been geniuses and madmen exploring questions such as who I am, why I am, who I was yesterday and who I am today. Why Qin Yanan is Qin Yanan, why Ye Sijin is Ye Sijin, whether Qin Yanan will become Ye Sijin, and what should Lu Chang'an and Zhu Huntang think about, these are the derivatives of the above questions. But Zhu Huntang should not ask Lu Chang'an this question, because although Lu Chang'an has never been replaced by another soul, he has countless identities. Which identity can represent him more? Lu Chang'an will not think about this problem. He is not a genius or a madman. Like most ordinary people, he only cares about the present and his own primary understanding. His thinking cannot be of reference value to Zhu Huntang, because the philosophy of life of an ant is meaningless for an elephant to understand. Just to express the difference, it does not mean that Lu Chang'an is an ant and Zhu Huntang is an elephant. Lu Chang'an and Zhu Huntang walked out of the community, and Zhu Huntang suggested taking her car there. Zhu Huntang took a low-key Maybach S680 today. This kind of car is very convenient and practical. In Zhu Huntang's opinion, it is still very unobtrusive. Even if you are a fairy, sometimes you want to go out and walk like an ordinary person, so just use a standard luxury car for ordinary people. Zhu Huntang trotted over and opened the car door. The hem of her skirt was swaying like flowers in the wind. Only then did Lu Chang'an notice that the lining of her seemingly ordinary skirt actually depicted a picture of the stars and the universe. Though sun and moon, the stars are dotted with sparkling gems or sequins. There is a universe under the fairy's skirt. Miss Third, you. Zhu Huntang turned around and saw a man wearing white chef's casual clothes looking at her in surprise. It was Zhang Jiai, the cook that Zhu Huntang hired from his second brother Zhu Lixing. Zhang Jiai looked at Zhu Huntang in surprise, because Zhu Huntang was actually opening the car door for someone else, because Zhu Huntang actually reached out to block the edge of the car roof. This is usually only greeted by the doormen of high-quality high-end hotels, restaurants, and other service places. This action is only done when sending guests off to prevent the guests from hitting their heads. Of course, there are also Zhu Huntang's own drivers and maids. What are you looking at? What are you doing here? Zhu Huntang felt a little embarrassed. After all, she was someone who knew her. She just unconsciously wanted to make a gesture to please Lu Chang'an. This month's new menu has a dish of wine-stewed river shrimp. I'm going to buy some fresh river shrimp. You haven't ordered this dish yet, have you? Zhang Jiai resumed his usual fawning smile and carefully revealed the meaning of this dish. It's really delicious. Even if you don't order it, the best ingredients are picked and prepared by the chef himself every day. This is a very important selling point in luxury restaurants. I know. Zhu Huntang nodded, walked around to the other side and got in the car. Being in the service industry, of course, he is good at observing details. Although Zhang Jiai is so bold that he dares to touch the women he has played with, he still has basic professional qualities. Zhang Jiai is secretly surprised. Who is the man who just saw a silhouette? Even if she is the third wife, this third young lady will not please her like this. After Zhu Huntang got in the car, he smiled at Lu Chang'an. The car started to drive, and Lu Chang'an was lamenting the progress of modern technology. In the past, cars included carriages, sedans, etc. Even if the interior could be made more luxurious and the space wider, there was no way to improve it in terms of sound insulation, shock absorption, etc. to this extent now. Of course, if he hadn't been with Zhu Huntang, Lu Chang'an would have walked there by himself. Although his pace was slow, he had already measured the continents and oceans. Let me ask you, what will happen if Qinyanan really becomes Yesijin? Zhu Huntang put down the sound insulation board and repeated the question worriedly. Lu Chang'an said that they had a plastic sisterhood, but of course Zhu Huntang took a firm stand on this issue. Qinyanan became Yesijin, that is, Qinyanan disappeared. Can Zhu Huntang not be sad? It's best not to happen. There's no point saying that now. Tell me about it. Zhu Huntang wanted to reach out and hug Lu Chang'an's arm to act coquettishly, but it was probably useless after thinking about it, not to mention the arm-length support. Yesijin is dead. When she dies, her soul is gone. Her brain is dead and there is no sign of vitality and blood. Her heart and brain have lost their functions. Then her nervous system has completely lost its function. The basis for maintaining consciousness does not exist. The self stored in her neural units, of course the consciousness has completely disappeared. How could it replace Qinyanan's self-awareness? Lu Chang'an analyzed using known scientific viewpoints. Zhu Huntang breathed a sigh of relief, and then said to Lu Chang'an, "That's it? Am I overthinking it? You're thinking too much, so you dragged me here to hang out with you." Lu Chang'an looked at Zhu Huntang calmly. I mean, this is for the best, but the key point is still a bit weird. She is the great-granddaughter of your old lover after all. Lu Chang'an slapped Zhu Huntang on the forehead without hesitation. First, Yesijin is not my old lover. Second, the relationship in that photo is that Yechinayu is Yesijin's biological brother and Qin Peng's cousin. Your original name was Yechinayu, Zhu Huntang suddenly realized, and then whispered, "This name is not very good." Lu Chang'an was too lazy to pay attention to her. Did she think people used to choose names the same way they do now, just randomly combining a few words together? For example, what is the name Zuhuntang? There are still updates today, all kinds of requests. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kuikan Ru Siahua. Chapter 133. Qinyanan's apartment is actually on the top of Lushan Mountain. Lu Chang'an also knew that Lushan Mountain was originally a national 5A level scenic spot. Due to development and construction in recent years, there are no private residences, but there is a hotel on the top of the mountain. On that day, Lu Chang'an and Ma Ben were next to the viewing platform for the live broadcast. Qinyanan rented a house with the best view in the hotel. It comes with a huge viewing rooftop, which is even better than the public platform in the scenic area. It can overlook the entire Junxia scenery. The scenery is better than that from the rooftop of Bailong Center. It looks more open. Coming here, Zhu Huntang has not finished asking the question. Then let me ask you, if you are really immortal, what is the difference between your mentality and ordinary people? I understand the first chapter of Zhounan, and you know the first and second chapters of Zhounan. Lu Chang'an picked a leaf and patted Zhu Huntang's mouth. Shut up and ring the doorbell. You don't need a doorbell. I gave her an elevator as a Children's Day gift. Zhu Huntang led Lu Chang'an around to the other side of the hotel. Qinyanan was on a long-term lease, so of course he would negotiate some terms with the hotel, including some requirements for decoration and renovation. Qinyanan naturally does not go through the hotel lobby and vestibule when entering or leaving. Children's Day. Yes, she gave me a set of 12 dresses from Zodiac Fairy Tales. Children's Day. Fairies always celebrate Children's Day. Qinyanan is just embarrassed to say that she is a fairy. Lu Chang'an nodded to express his understanding. Isn't he also an 18-year-old boy? It is normal for these fairies to think that they will always be children. But what are the first and second chapters of Zhounan? Zhu Huntang asked. This is what every human being should read, and you don't know. Zhu Huntang really didn't know. Maybe he should be able to read as a human being, but he was born a fairy. The two took the elevator to the second floor. There were 3 elevators in total. The first floor was just for entry, the second floor was Qinyanan's suite, and the third floor led to the private viewing platform. Why are you interested in coming together today? Qinyanan had already received Zhu Huntang's message on the way. After washing, she changed into a light green skirt. The green knotted buttons are delicate and elegant, and the skirt as light as tulle is dyed with patches. Clusters of bamboo leaves cover the white lining. They flutter like the wind when walking. Her long hair is loose and she has cut fluffy bangs. It has a pure and light feeling, as if it should be a person living alone, and when you see it, you will suspect that it is the peerless elegance of an immortal. Qinyanan is indeed beautiful. Although her eyes, eyebrows, and feet are often a little cold and arrogant, when she faces familiar people, she naturally turns into a smile. We are suddenly interested in the pop music of the 1930s and 1940s, and we want to chat with you. Zhu Huntang felt that his opening remarks were very skillful. He could not only test whether Qinyanan was Yesijin now, but also start to test her further. Topic, or stimulate her to have some abnormal situation. Ah, Qinyanan looked at Zhu Huntang suspiciously. You seem tone deaf, right? Zhu Huntang saw you sleepwalking last night and suspected that Yesijin had possessed you. Lu Chang'an said straight to the point. Zhu Huntang hurriedly covered Lu Chang'an's mouth and stamped his feet anxiously. How can you say it directly? If you say it directly, if she is Yesijin, she will pretend to be Qinyanan to avoid exposing herself. Are you crazy? Qinyanan glared at Zhu Huntang angrily. Zhu Huntang recognized this look and breathed a sigh of relief. Lu Chang'an said with certainty, it's Qinyanan. If she were her great-grandmother, she would definitely not roll her eyes so rudely. Lu Chang'an opened Zhu Huntang's hand. His fingers were white and soft, like white jade jelly beans. But, you said I sleepwalked last night. Qin Yinan knew that Zhu Huntang and Lu Chang'an were here on an appointment, so they must have gone to the Three Treasures Hall for nothing. Yes, Zhu Huntang also admitted that Lu Chang'an, a pig teammate, had already revealed his intentions, so he had no choice but to get straight to the point. Fortunately, now she has confirmed that it is Qin Yinan. As for what Lu Chang'an said about Yesijin's soul being impossible to survive, she has forgotten it. Seeing is believing, isn't it? Lu Chang'an may also make mistakes. Even though he is a fairy, he often makes mistakes. I have a problem with sleepwalking. Qin Yinan sighed softly, it's been a bit frequent recently. Did I scare you last night? Hearing Qin Yinan's apologetic tone, Zhu Huntang felt embarrassed. No, I'll stay with you until dawn before leaving. Generally, if you sleepwalk once, there won't be a second time at night. She said that you acted very much like Yesijin last night, with similar facial expressions, and you even sang Rose Rose I Love You. Lu Chang'an continued. Zhu Huntang discovered that Lu Chang'an really had no speaking skills at all. If he talked about things like this, nothing would be achieved. Isn't it? Qin Yinan was startled. He opened his lips slightly and exposed the tip of his tongue a little. He took a deep breath and retracted, squinting his eyes uncertainly, because Lu Chang'an always said that I look good. She looked exactly like my great-grandmother, so I ordered a cheongsam of the same style and color as my great-grandmother's photo, imitating her facial expressions, and also learned to sing popular songs of that era, probably because of this reason. Ah, is that so? Qin Yinan's reason explained everything perfectly, which made Zhu Huntang suddenly realize and was disappointed. It turned out that there really was no such thing as soul possession. It's possible. Lu Chang'an stared into Qin Yinan's eyes and said, I think about it every day and dream about it at night. Qin Yinan just looked at Lu Chang'an and smiled. Do you want me to put it on for you to see? No need. Lu Chang'an shook his head. You are you, and Yesijin is Yesijin. There is no need to imitate her. No matter how much you imitate, you are not the same person, but you will be affected. It is unlucky to imitate someone who has passed away. According to folk saying, it will make the deceased unstable, and it is possible for the deceased to return to his soul after sensing the world's obsession with him. Qin Yinan's body trembled slightly, as if she was startled. Okay, I feel chilled by what you said. Yes, you talk about scientific analysis at one time and folk superstition at the other. It's up to you to say whatever you want. Zhu Huntang also crossed his arms to express fear. Don't talk about it, since you're here today, don't leave in a hurry. I'm not having fun. Qin Yinan laughed again, at least we have to have a meal here at noon. Lu Chang'an, you go down the mountain with me to buy something first. Food. I won't go. The vegetable market is the most secular place in the world, and it doesn't match my temperament. Zhu Huntang said to himself. No one asked you to go. I play computer. There's something wrong with the computer. I just formatted it. I watch TV. Lu Chang'an and Qin Yinan went down the mountain to buy vegetables together. Zhu Huntang was definitely not good at shopping for vegetables. There was no point in calling her. The point was that Qin Yinan felt that cooking was a science starting from the selection of ingredients. She wanted to talk to Lu Chang'an. A partner buys groceries once. There is nothing wrong with Lu Chang'an's different rhetoric about Zhu Huntang and Qin Yinan. It is not that the author's logic is confusing. In addition, there are various demands. I'm really immortal. Author, Chu Lian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 134. Apart from the Japanese side, there are very few things in this world that Lu Chang'an has never eaten. He knows a lot about the weird methods of making various raw materials, but it is impossible to eat them all. However, he has tried many edible food ingredients. especially those foods that are extremely poisonous but cannot be eliminated. He is probably the only person who has eaten them and is still alive. What do you want to eat today? Qin Yinan asked Lu Chang'an while driving. Let's see if we can buy a sheep's head, Lu Chang'an said while looking at Qin Yinan's profile, paying attention to her expression. Sheep heads are hard to buy, right? But I do know that there are often mutton sellers nearby, maybe some. But you don't have to choose. I also want to see if your ability to choose ingredients is as good as your ability to eat. Qin Yinan smiled. You can see my knife skills and cooking skills. Of course I have to cook such a big dish myself. Lu Chang'an withdrew his gaze. You're too arrogant. Don't you know? Our family used to eat sheep's head meat every year after the beginning of autumn. I can cook white water sheep's head, white soup sheep's head, sauced sheep's head, and even floured sheep's head. Qin Yinan Wei feels proud. Sheep head with flowers, it was a famous palace dish recorded in Yinshan Zhenjiao and was specially eaten by the emperors at that time. In fact, it tasted rough and mixed, but it was just suitable for the rough appetite of the Yuan people. In fact, it was just like that, Lu Chang'an said without much appreciation. I have improved it, Qin Yinan said unconvinced. Just eat sheep head meat. To make a floured sheep head, you also need a lot of ingredients such as lamb loin, lamb tripe, and lamb lungs. Do you want your kitchen to smell like lamb for the next week? As a girl, this is of course more unbearable. After thinking about it, I still compromised, not to mention that sheep heads may not be available. Then do you know why your family eats sheep heads after the beginning of autumn? I heard that it was because my great-grandmother and great-grandfather were not feeling well when they first arrived in the capital, especially because my great-grandmother was weak and cold, so she ate some sheep head meat as a supplement. Qin Yinan still knew this, even though his great-grandfather was unwilling to say more about many past events. Even suddenly choked up in the middle of the conversation, as if he couldn't continue, and then walked away on his own, ignoring the whole hall of children and grandchildren who were listening to him. Yes, your family's methods are probably inherited from my great-grandfather's methods. Qin Yinan did not doubt it, but just laughed. Most people talk about a long history. I think it is not only the blood relationship, but also reflected in all kinds of small things in interactions. The closer the relationship, the more it is reflected in the shortcomings of the parents. It doesn't just have to rely on blood marriage or the like. Your great-grandfather was a man who valued friendship very much. He said that a gentleman's fortune will last 3 generations. Let me extend the meaning of this sentence. You can see that the friendship between your family and the Su family goes far beyond 3 generations, Lu Chang'an said softly. He coughed, then turned to look at Qin Yinan. But if your great-grandmother were alive, she would probably still be resentful of Sume. Yes, even though I don't know what happened back then, I heard from the little fairy that Mrsu and my great-grandfather talked back and forth, and they would avoid the topic of my great-grandmother when reminiscing about the past. Qin Yinan frowned slightly. Old people like them also. If we don't talk about it, are we going to drag all the past things into the dirt? Are you cursing them that they are almost finished? How can I not? Qin Yinan hurriedly said ba to dispel the bad luck. This is Qin Yinan, and Lu Chang'an confirmed that the theory of soul possession should be confirmed by scientific analysis to analyze its absurd nature, rather than by superstitious soul-calling claims. But Qin Yinan still made people feel that something was wrong. Lu Chang'an didn't think that he was overthinking. He was just relying on intuition and conscious or unconscious observation for the time being. The information collected was not enough to directly draw an analysis conclusion. The summer solstice is coming. Do you want to go back and see the old man? Lu Chang'an then asked. He won't let him. Qin Yinan was helpless. When we came up, I talked to Zhu Huntang about the first and second chapters of Zhounan, the first chapter Guanju, and the second chapter Ge10. The former talks about the love between men and women, and the latter talks about the relationship between men and women. What is more important is the woman's concern and longing for her parents when she is in a foreign country. You can copy GE10 and send it to him. Even if it is your great-grandfather instead of your parents, he will understand what you mean, Lu Chang'an suggested. Qin Yan'an couldn't help but laugh out loud. Are you from ancient times? Only ancient people like to mince words like this, and they also copy poems. According to you, then I copied him a song hospital? Are there no such things now? The correct way is to act coquettishly with the old man, but this method is useless. Then you stay in Junsha. Lu Chang'an was a little embarrassed and suddenly realized that some of his habits really hadn't kept pace with the times, but that didn't matter. As a modern person, it's okay to keep some habits. Good. I'm giving you an advantage by staying in Junsha. Qin Yan'an's eyebrows were flowing, and there was a hint of flattery. It was only because he felt that there was some ambiguity after saying it, but he was too lazy to explain, and he was shy. He was so beautiful. It's extremely charming. Her original intention was just to say that she could cook food for Lu Chang'an. He must have been able to understand it, but her deliberate explanation failed. There was no need for it. He was so much younger than her, so why should she explain herself? You're thinking too much. Lu Chang'an shook his head, even though a woman's charm was probably the most beautiful thing in the picture. Qin Yan'an braked suddenly, her blood rising. Fortunately, her seat belt was fastened. The skirt she wore today was not the type that would explode. What I mean is that our relationship is very simple. If you try to take advantage of me, I won't take advantage of you, Lu Chang'an explained. You're crazy too. What I mean is, if I stay in Junsha, I can make delicious food for you. Qin Yan'an reached out and hit Lu Chang'an on the shoulder. So that's it? There are 300 poems. In one word, my thoughts are innocent. It seems that my thoughts have not been very pure recently. I will go back and read the book of songs, Lu Chang'an said with emotion, but speaking of it, Confucius is still, it's really a sin. After collecting thousands of poems, he deleted only 305. If I had known it would be like this, I would have. What did you get into again? Qin Yan'an said angrily. No wonder Lu Chang'an and Zhu Huntang seemed to have a good relationship, and they both felt good about themselves. No, there is an ambiguity in your statement. It is natural for me to understand it inappropriately. I hope you can understand. Let's stop arguing about these boring things. There are few things in this world that are more important than buying groceries, Lu Chang'an and Qin Yan'an said reason. Qin Yan'an was not Lu Chang'an's girlfriend, so she was reasonable and nodded, agreeing with his statement that there are few things in the world more important than buying groceries. The two of them came to the vegetable market and found a stall that Qin Yan'an said often sells mutton. There happened to be a sheep head on the stall. Give me this sheep's head. In unison, both fingers pointed at the sheep's head, but it was not Lu Chang'an and Qin Yan'an who said the same thing, but Qin Yan'an and another woman. The stall owner was a little embarrassed. He knocked on the chopping board with a knife. Who is this for? You can give it to whoever is good looking, Lu Chang'an said casually while looking at the sheep egg. Then who do you think is good looking? Lu Chang'an looked back, feeling really embarrassed. He just said it casually. All kinds of requests. I'm really immortal. Author, Chu Lian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 135. Then who do you think is good looking? This sentence was said by the butcher selling mutton. For the butcher, there is no difference no matter who buys his sheep head, but if he decides who looks good and sells it, this problem becomes difficult, because if the sheep head is sold to one party, it means that the other party not only did one party not buy the sheep's head, but it was also considered not as good looking as the others. This is not a big deal, but for the women, this is definitely something that will make them angry. So the butcher was a little annoyed and handed the choice back to the young man looking at the sheep's balls in front of him. He originally thought that this boy was good. After all, Men who know how to put their eyes on the sheep's balls are gentle and considerate men. Looking at the young man's embarrassed look, the butcher felt a little relieved. Who asked you to stir up trouble? Of course Lu Chang'an was embarrassed. Originally, he just wanted to praise Qin Yanan in an implicit way casually. He is good looking, very good looking, and so good looking that he must sell the sheep head to you. After all, beautiful women are a scarce resource. It would be difficult for two tofu beauties to appear in the vegetable market at the foot of Lushan Mountain. Is it possible to meet a woman comparable to Qin Yanan casually? I really met her. Although she looks older than Qin Yanan, her mature charm has a charming and naive temperament that is particularly moving. The sharpness of a professional woman is mixed with the fancy in the sun and the beauty in clothes inside. The smell of willow belts, like lying in a fragrant quilt, makes people feel that such a woman should always be seen through a layer of gauze and a layer of mist, with her charming smile, lazy and charming. The most important point is that this beautiful woman who always looks at Lu Chang'an with a suspicious look is the woman who reminds people of the poem After the Date is at Dusk, the moon is above the willow branches, and Nuan's mother Lu Yusi. How much does this sheep head cost? I'll scan WeChat, Lu Chang'an said to the butcher. The butcher was stunned. Since you want to ask me, of course I will say that I am the prettiest. I am better looking than both of them, so the sheep's head belongs to me. Lu Chang'an pointed to the sheep's head and said, weigh it. When we meet on a narrow road, the brave wins, and being thick-skinned also requires courage. In this project, Lu Chang'an naturally has a lot of courage. The corners of Qin Yanan's mouth were slightly raised, a little reserved, and when she glanced sideways, she naturally had a cold and charming look. She always looked like this in public places. Even though the vegetable market was not a place where beauties were more beautiful, he still looked at her. There are many eyes. This little cousin was really admirable and tight, but she didn't care. She was just curious about the reaction of the young woman next to her who looked like a lawyer, teacher, or public servant wearing a shirt and skirt and carrying a large Princess Di bag. I won't fight with you for this sheep's head. You are Lu Chang'an. Lu Yuwang looked around. Since she had long been paying attention to the relationship between An Nuan and Lu Chang'an, of course she knew what Lu Chang'an looked like, but it turns out they were both looking at the photo. I wasn't very sure for a moment, but his shamelessness was the same as Lu Yuwang's impression, so I made a judgment. Yes, Lu Chang'an nodded and glanced at Lu Yuwang. The real person is indeed better looking than the photo. The photo may not look so fair and tender due to the lens or light. As the saying goes, one white hides three ugliness, not to mention that it is originally a tall beautiful woman. Since you are Lu Chang'an, do you dare to compete with me for this sheep's head? Lu Yuwang said angrily, I'm looking for you. Come on, let's find a place to talk. Hey, what's going on? Qin Yanan was a little confused. We knew each other. Why did this woman look so confident? Why don't I dare to compete with you for this sheep's head? Who are you? You are riding two boats. Lu Yuwang suddenly reacted and hurriedly took out his mobile phone from his bag. He took several photos in a row as if to capture evidence. He also zoomed in and took photos of Lu Chang'an and Qin Yanan's faces. A close-up. She didn't use a beauty app, but directly used the lens of her mobile phone. When she took the photo, Qin Yanan didn't look as good-looking as she first saw, which made Lu Yuwang feel a little victorious. I want to send it to An Nuan. Lu Yuwang sent the photo again. The evidence is conclusive. What else do you have to say? Auntie, I'm his cousin. Qin Yanan understood. She was not an idiot. Lu Yuwang revealed her secrets in just a few words. Qin Yanan naturally seized the opportunity. If Zhou Dongdong called Qin Yanan aunt, Qin Yanan would do it. She was a little unhappy, not to mention the fact that she called aunt. For a woman of Lu Yuwang's age, this was undoubtedly a heartbreaking blow. You can call me Professor Lu, don't call me aunt. I'm only in my 30s and I look about the same age as you. Lu Yuwang said dissatisfied. I look about the same age as you. Qin Yanan was really shocked. How good does this make him feel about himself? Lu Yuwang looked at Qin Yanan carefully and nodded unhappily. Are you not happy that you are about the same age as me? What does your unhappy expression mean? Qin Yanan had not been sleeping well recently and got angry easily, so she sneered in anger. While Lu Yuwang and Qin Yanan were competing, Lu Chang'an had already paid the sheep's head, wrapped it in newspapers and carried it in a plastic bag. Professor Lu, this is really my cousin. And Nuan also knows her. You should take this sheep's head. You are right. I shouldn't argue with you. How can Lu Chang'an care about a sheep's head? Lu Yuwang waved his hand a little embarrassedly. Forget it, there is no right or wrong, and I am not an unreasonable person. Since it is all a misunderstanding, it will be fine if everyone makes it clear. Xiao Lu, I won't do it today. Sorry to bother you, I changed my name and came over for dinner. After saying that, Lu Yuwang didn't say anything more to Qin Yanan, turned around and left quickly. This person. Qin Yanan was startled, not knowing what to say. Since she is Nuan's mother, she is young and beautiful. No such beautiful mother can give birth to such a beautiful daughter, but why does she think that she is the mother? So, I can't tell. A 36-year-old woman has an 18-year-old heart, Lu Chang'an said to Qin Yanan. She is really only in her 30s. Qin Yanan was really surprised. Such a young mother had such a big daughter. It reminded her of the famous mother and daughter, but Lu Yuwang was of course prettier. Anyuan's figure is also better. But she doesn't seem to object to you and Nuan being together. This shows some discernment, and she is not one of those blind women. Qin Yanan nodded slightly approvingly. When you first met me, your impression was not good. Do you still think that I am not enterprising, shameless, and have no attitude of being strong or motivated in front of girls? Lu Chang'an laughed. Qin Yanan's pretty face turned red and she glared at Lu Chang'an. He could see the emotion. Can I look at my fiancé and my cousin from the same angle? Qin Yanan is not someone who admits mistakes easily. She doesn't want to talk about this embarrassing topic. Lu Yuwang must have something to do and left in a hurry. Please, I think eating in the past was just a scene. Lu Chang'an didn't express his opinion, but just continued to buy groceries with Qin Yanan. He paid attention to the messages and sure enough, his mobile phone received several photos taken by Lu Yuwang just now. Uncle, my boyfriend said that this woman is her cousin, and he and my mother snatched sheep heads from the market because of this woman. Do you think I should break up with him? Only then did Lu Chang'an realize. You left in a hurry. It turned out that you were deliberately looking for someone to give you some determination and support. Are you going to stir up trouble in front of Nuan? This was not the first time. Lu Chang'an remembered that several times she had asked him for advice before going to Nuan to make trouble. For example, that time she tried to arrange a circumcision surgery for Lu Chang'an. Hello everyone, today's message is for Zhou Dongdong. Zhou Dongdong hasn't had much delicious food recently because he doesn't have a monthly ticket to buy it. Please support monthly tickets so that I can ask Lu Chang'an to give Zhou Dongdong more delicious food. Make her children stupider and happier. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 136. It is said that the more a mother-in-law looks at her son-in-law, the more she likes her son-in-law. Although Lu Chang'an and Nuan have not reached that level yet, many mothers often show some affection towards their daughter's boyfriend after accepting their daughter's relationship. Or a request, probably hoping that the boy can take care of his daughter and not bully her. This Lu Yuwang is very unusual. She doesn't talk to Nuan about the truth, what she says comes from her mother's experience, she just makes trouble for herself, as if no matter what, it is right to break up the two of them first. What kind of thinking is this? Lu Chang'an was a little hard to understand, but after thinking about how difficult it was to try to understand a woman he didn't understand, he gave up. Why is your mother targeting your boyfriend all day long? According to what you said, your boyfriend is versatile, gentle, considerate, and young and steady. Why is your mother so troubled? You are talking about my mother. You are so cruel. I will ignore you later. This is a woman who can't bear to hear the slightest bad tone from others. She can probably hear it in daily life, and she can remain calm, but she must have xiaojiju in her heart to write down an account. It's just a sheep's head. If your boyfriend knew that it was your mother, he would definitely give it to her. I guess your mother must have pretended to be polite, and then turned around and ran in front of you to make trouble, so don't just listen. Your mother's one-sided statement. My mother is not such a person. She is not a gossip at all. She is gentle and virtuous. She does not have the problems of ordinary women at all. She is well educated and tolerant. Okay, it's everyone else's fault. Your mother is the best. She is the most beautiful, gentle, and perfect in the world. That's pretty much it? Uh-huh. I'm a little angry today. I'm going to dance. Bye. Lu Chang'an smiled, turned around, and found that Qin Yan'an glanced at him from time to time, seeing that he had put away his mobile phone, and then handed him the bag in his hand. I guess you are the kind of person who goes shopping with girls and wants to find a place to sit down as soon as you enter the mall. Qin Yan'an lowered his voice. When you come to the vegetable market with a woman, the man won't help carry things, and the woman it's very shameless, understand? Is there such a statement? Lu Chang'an had never heard of it. It was unheard of. Qin Yan'an nodded. Okay, whatever you say is what it is. Lu Chang'an was carrying a sheep head and a bag. He had no time to play with his mobile phone. He followed Qin Yan'an to pick some vegetables. After buying the vegetables, he put them on the back seat. Qin Yan'an took wet wipes and wiped them with him. Hand. How are you and that little girl in Nuan? Qin Yan'an drove away. The wine is like a flower, but it has been kept for 10 years because of who flooded it. Qin Yan'an laughed and said, you are inappropriate. The poem Ren Qin Guan is for singing girls. If the little girl knows that you use such words to compare, she will have to break up with you. Just quote the meaning. It's not about reading comprehension. You also need to know the background of the article and the author. Lu Chang'an put down his seat and lay lazily. In short, we are doing well now, and it is natural to continue like this. I have paid more attention to things than Qin Guan. Qin Guan only lasted 10 years, but I will use up Lu Chang'an's life. I can't say that. 10 years for a mortal is also very precious, but listen to the words of a scholar. Never mind. TCH, if you only spend your whole life, others will say that you will live forever. Qin Yan'an said disdainfully, with a bit of sourness in her tone. Single women hate it when men say love words to other women in front of them. Lu Chang'an smiled, arguing with a woman was meaningless. Qin Yan'an didn't like this attitude of I don't care about you, so he found a song Love Offering and played it in a loop mode. The sound system in her car is of course top-notch. It is more expensive than the audiovisual room built in ordinary people's homes. The effect is very good, and this song. I will spend my whole life supporting you. I will spend my whole life supporting you. When this line was played, Qin Yan'an sang along, looking at Lu Chang'an and making a sour expression while singing. Lu Chang'an followed her. After all, women like to do some boring things, and women will become crazy. The car drove slower on the way back. There were many tourists on the road. The car was parked in the yard, and some people were leaning on the fence and looking in. Qin Yan'an actually regretted living here. He originally thought that the top of the mountain would be clean and seclusion and quiet. What a taste! Who knew that from time to time, tourists and children would climb over the fence to play, press the elevator indiscriminately, and when they saw Qin Yan'an, They would ask to go to the rooftop observation deck to take pictures. Qin Yinan had encountered this kind of thing many times, and she was willing to agree at first. But now it is there all day long, and it is very annoying. The only solution is to ask the hotel to install a sign saying no visitors. Why have you been here for so long? Zhu Huntang had just come down from the third floor. He complained a little, but immediately said proudly, I was on the top of the building just now. When the tourists below saw me, they all felt that their trip was worthwhile. Okay, later I will write a national 6A level scenic spot sign and hang it around your neck, Qin Yinan said with approval. A level, Zhu Huntang looked at Qin Yinan with some suspicion. Are you mocking me again? I don't have that spare time. Our country's scenic spots are all rated 3A, 4A, and 5A. It has nothing to do with your bra cup. Qin Yinan showed a teasing smile, calm and confident. Why are you so sensitive? You are not just A's. You are a dirty big-name woman, Zhu Huntang scolded. You. Qin Yinan was about to scold back, but looked back. Fortunately, Lu Chang'an had gone to the kitchen, and she was too lazy to pay attention to Zhu Huntang and followed him into the kitchen. Zhu Huntang also came to take a look. Eating is a big deal, cooking is of course also a big deal, and the preparation before cooking is also particularly important. Lu Chang'an naturally has no interest in paying attention to the girls' daily bickering, and is dealing with the sheep head seriously. This is a castrated white goat. The smell is not that strong. Let's soak it for a while first. Lu Chang'an took a large deep bucket of soup pot and put the goat head in it, poured cold water in and soaked it. Qin Yinan is a good cook. Yes, generally this kind of people like to collect and buy kitchen utensils. They have all kinds of knives and cooking utensils, which are very convenient. It can easily make people who are proficient in cooking feel like they want to show off their skills, just like the hidden masters in the world. When a magical weapon arrives, you can't help but want to return to the world again. Do you want me to help you? Qin Yinan also wanted to try Lu Chang'an's cooking skills to see how talented this person who is particularly good at eating and can teach others about cooking is. No, just wait and eat. I never cook. It will hurt my skin. What if I cut my hand with a knife and get a scar from water? Zhu Huntang looked at his flawless hands, imagining the terrible scene of scars on them, and was afraid. Then I'm not perfect, he said. Then please don't stand at the door of the kitchen blocking the way. Lu Chang'an walked out of the kitchen. Let's play cards first. Is it okay to run away? How do you know how to play cards? Qin Yinan and Zhu Huntang said this together. This person spent all day playing cards and gambling with a group of old men and women in the community, and they didn't know what the fun was. You can play cards, but you are not allowed to cheat. There are surveillance cameras in the room. Zhu Huntang remembered that Lu Chang'an had superpowers, and in those God of Gamblers movies, people with superpowers would use their superpowers to cheat. Are you installing surveillance cameras in your room? Lu Chang'an asked strangely. He raised his head and didn't find where the camera was at first glance. He didn't know if it was installed in the bedroom, and it was not convenient for him to see a girl's bedroom. It's installed everywhere, even in the bedroom, Zhu Huntang said regretfully. I just found out, but it's a pity that the computer has been formatted, otherwise I should be able to see what happened last night. What's so interesting? Do you really want to prove that I'm possessed by my great-grandmother? You're crazy, Qin Yinan said angrily. I had people assemble this computer in the computer city. Now all kinds of peeping doors are leaking out. There were so many backdoor incidents, and I was worried that there might be some backdoor software installed, so I reinstalled the system myself. How could I know what happened last night, and you didn't tell me earlier? It makes sense. He explained it naturally and without any problem. Lu Chang'an nodded and continued to invite everyone to play cards. Zhou Dongdong is already 30% full, but he must eat 100% to be satisfied. Please give me monthly votes and recommendation votes. Thank you for your generous rewards. I'm really immortal. Author, Chu Lian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 137. People in Junxia often have tiles, poker and mahjong in their homes. There is no mahjong here in Qinyanan, but there are still tiles. Qinyanan and Zhuhantang are not very good at it, but the rules are similar to mahjong. It is simple and easy to learn. They just play casually to pass the time. Lu Chang'an does not want to win any bets, but Zhu Huntang feels confident after playing 2 games and wants to play a little more. Big, but Lu Chang'an and Qinyanan ignored her. After a while, Lu Chang'an went to brush the sheep's head. He used a brush to brush his scalp. The whiter the brush, the better. But if the brush was broken, it would be too poor. Then he opened his mouth and brushed his tongue, and rinsed his mouth, nose, and ears back and forth with water. It's pretty neat. Qinyanan stood at the door of the kitchen and looked. Lu Chang'an didn't answer. He took a knife and made a long cut from the middle of the sheep's scalp to the nasal cavity, put it into a pot, poured in cold water and started to boil. Did you know that the most famous mutton head meat in Beijing is ma yukan from Kunming Weilan Zhishao? It has been passed down to the family for 6 generations. During the socialist transformation after liberation, Ma Yukan worked as a transportation worker. When Nanleshun opened, the manager at the time Chen Liansheng finally found Ma Yukan to return to his old business. Ma Yukan is the famous sheep-headed horse. Nowadays, it is said that Ma Yukan's skills have been lost, but this is not the case. Lu Chang'an was a little proud. There are always many conveniences and benefits when people live long. Today you are in luck, the peerless skills have reappeared in the world. I really don't believe this. I only heard from the older generation about Ma Yukan's sheep head. It is said that it is almost sold out as soon as it is made. It has been passed down for 6 generations and it is a family tradition. Can you know it? Of course, it has been lost anyway. As long as you cook delicious food, no one can prove that what you said is not true. Qinyanan really didn't believe it anymore. Lu Chang'an didn't talk nonsense. It would take some time to cook the sheep's head. He continued to go out and play cards for a while before entering the kitchen again. Qinyanan followed him to play cards and followed him into the kitchen. Lu Chang'an saw that the sheep's head was cooked until it was 7 mature, took it out, and while it was still hot, he took the sheep's face, sheepskin, and mutton to both sides from the cut in the middle of the scalp, removed the skull, and poked out the sheep's eyes with his index finger. Split the skull and took out the sheep's brain, completely removed the 2 pieces of the sheep's face and tongue, and immersed them in cold water. This neat and smooth process made Qinyanan stunned. You must know that Lu Chang'an lifted the sheep's head directly from the boiling water and started to grill it. Isn't he afraid of being burned? Qinyanan didn't bother to stop him from being burned. He was an adult and he wouldn't be so pushy. He must have the ability. Qinyanan is ashamed of this skill alone, but many experienced chefs can withstand hot ingredients. Many things have to be processed while they are hot. It is impossible if the palms cannot withstand the heat, and they do not have the meticulous skills to use gloves. After soaking for a while, Lu Chang'an took a casserole and stir-fried rock salt and roasted it over low heat. He then crushed Sichuan peppercorns and added other condiments to make salt and pepper. He put it into a horn bowl to avoid losing the flavor. In fact, this secret salt and pepper is for eating. The key to lamb head meat. It is cut and eaten now. When Lu Chang'an placed the mutton head meat on a long cutting board and then showed Qinyanan what it means to salt like snow, cut it into pieces as thin as paper, Qinyanan was already convinced. Well, with such crafts and cooking skills, there is absolutely no need to brag about the inheritance of so-and-so. People with special skills are often arrogant. How can they cling to others for no reason? But since it is said to be a reappearance of the human world, it is a reappearance of the human world, and one will not change someone else's skills to his own name. I'm going to fire Zhang Jiai and ask you to be the chef. Zhu Huntang was full of admiration, but he just said that taking Lu Chang'an for his own use is a long-term and arduous task, and he can't actually practice it now. He said with some envy, I heard from Zhou Dongdong that you often make delicious food for her. No wonder it's chubby, Qin Yinan said with enlightenment. She also often gives me food. This is a courtesy, Lu Chang'an thinks so. Qin Yinan glanced at Lu Chang'an a few more times, feeling the delicious taste on his lips and tongue. The meat slices were white and clean, thin and large, tender and crispy, fresh and mellow but not greasy. Coupled with the secret salt and pepper, it made every taste bud jump for joy. How come the dancing is so delicious? If I eat it every day, I will definitely gain weight, Zhu Huntang said worriedly. You don't have this chance, Qin Yinan felt that she was overthinking. Lu Chang'an also smiled, and started to slice it into pieces himself. The lamb head meat needs to be cold, but the salt and pepper should be eaten as soon as it is freshly fried. If it is cold and damp, the taste will be much different. Qin Yinan ate by himself and watched Lu Chang'an eat, thinking that Zhu Huntang had overthought it, and An Nuan was the one who had this opportunity. After all, Lu Chang'an said that he would spend his whole life with An Nuan. The little girl An Nuan at least had a good taste. Qin Yinan found that she was actually a little jealous of An Nuan. Really, he is getting better and better at eating this bite. Qin Yinan smiled and took small bites of the mutton head meat in his mouth. After eating, do you feel anything familiar after eating? Lu Chang'an put down the slicing knife in his hand and asked casually. No, this is your first time tasting this, Qin Yinan shook his head. Perhaps your great-grandfather can taste it with a familiar feeling, Lu Chang'an nodded. When Yechinayu took his younger brothers and sisters in the capital, this was the taste he often made. Yechinayu. Qin Yinan reacted after thinking for a while and laughed in surprise, so that's the name. Sinking fish, falling geese, closing moon, shy flowers, Zhu Huntang said with a smile. How can you joke with an elder's name? Qin Yinan glared at Zhu Huntang. It's Chen, she's Chen, Jin Yu's you. Lu Chang'an nodded and kept looking at Qin Yinan. But why do you call your great-grandfather by his first name? Qin Yinan asked strangely. Zhu Huntang lowered her head to drink tea because she wanted to laugh. It doesn't matter, he doesn't care. Of course, Qin Yinan had nothing to say, and said to Zhu Huntang, who was drinking tea, we have both done the work, and it is up to you to clear the table. Me, Zhu Huntang pointed to himself, then picked up the phone. I'll ask someone to clean it up. Don't, forget it, I'm too lazy to argue with you, Qin Yinan sneered at this kind of capitalist, corrupt and degenerate lady who didn't do anything. She stood up and cleared the table. Lu Chang'an was in the kitchen, so there was no reason to ask him to do anything. Qin Yinan went to the kitchen, and Zhu Huntang looked at Lu Chang'an and lowered his voice. Grandpa, you are testing Qin Yinan, right? You can actually see that. Lu Chang'an thought Zhu Huntang's mind was as empty as the universe under her skirt. How is it? Did you test anything? I think there must be something wrong. What a coincidence. What happened last night? She formatted the hard drive this morning. Sooner or later, Zhu Huntang sneered slightly. I grew up watching Conan. The test came out. There is nothing wrong with her. You are thinking too much. Lu Chang'an drank tea by himself. Zhu Huntang was stunned for a moment. He didn't know for a moment whether Lu Chang'an was perfunctory or if he really didn't find anything. I'm really immortal. Author, Chu Lian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 138. Zhu Huntang stood up and walked around the restaurant. The restaurant, which was less than 20 square meters, was a bit small. Several green branches with leaves the size of coins stretched out from the window. The broken flower buds like rice grains were still stained with water. The beads were sprayed by Qin Yinan just now. They were fresh and elegant. Am I really thinking too much? Zhu Huntang is not the kind of person who will be easily persuaded or fooled. What would you do if she was really Yes Ijin? Say hello. I'm serious with you. Zhu Huntang looked into the kitchen and lowered his voice. This is the time when you need to make a choice. Should you reminisce about old friendships and be very happy to see Ye Sijin again, or be sad that Qin Yinan has been replaced by someone else? Why should I make the choice? Lu Chang'an looked at Zhu Huntang incomprehensibly. The issue you mentioned is Ye Sijin's matter and Qin Yinan's matter. Why should I make the choice? Not to mention the situation you mentioned. It doesn't exist at all, idle. Zhu Huntang had no choice but to give up. Thinking about it carefully, Lu Chang'an was still very likely to fool him. He was not Zhou Dongdong. He could cheat someone by giving him some snacks. Ask him himself. He would never tell the truth to her. Why? Because for him, Ye Sijin and Qin Yinan must be more like his own than Zhu Huntang. What he wants to do, of course, he has to deal with it himself. Why discuss it with Zhu Huntang or tell her? A man's heart is like a stick under the sea. Zhu Huntang sighed secretly. He had to continue to observe and investigate this matter, and he could not count on Lu Chang'an. Don't offend Qin Yinan. Even though you are a fairy, in the land of Junxia, her father is the Jade Emperor. Lu Chang'an reminded Zhu Huntang. Zhu Huntang doesn't care about this, the most she can do is spank me. My mother has a good relationship with his parents, and adults don't care about children's affairs. Yes, they are all celebrating Children's Day. Children are noisy and don't stay overnight. Lu Chang'an nodded in agreement. Qin Yinan came out of the kitchen, carrying the cut fruit plate, and pointed to the transparent window on the wall. Take out the macarons and a dessert plate. You go upstairs and sit down first. I'll make them. Tea will be served again. This time Zhu Huntang didn't call for help. He looked around and found that the plate with macarons was the lightest, so he took that one and gave the rest to Lu Chang'an. The independent landscape platform on the roof uses the roof of the entire room, and there is an external transparent swimming pool on the edge. There are potted bamboos on the left and right, which can be regarded as a natural barrier, blocking the gaze of tourists on the public platform on the other side. The swimming pool has been renovated. It's just too small. You can just swim back and forth. Playing in the water is pretty much, well, there's no water gun. Zhu Huntang turned on the cold air, but the open-air viewing platform was still a bit hot. Lu Chang'an walked to the edge to look at the scenery. There were red fences scattered around the platform. From a lower position, he could see that there were already many tourists on the public platform on the right. Even though it was the hottest time in the afternoon, several large sunshades, there were people sitting under the umbrella. Under a big black umbrella, a tall man was looking over here. When he saw Lu Chang'an, he showed a slightly surprised expression. He stretched out his fingers and touched the edge of the umbrella. The attendant holding the umbrella for him quickly raised the umbrella of higher. Qin Yinan made tea and brought it over. Lu Chang'an took it in his hand and continued to look around. Seeing the man downstairs smiling and waving, Qin Yinan nodded and sat back with a calm expression. In autumn, it can probably calm down at night. This is the scene of birdsong stream. Lu Chang'an sat back and drank tea. Although this place was too noisy during the day, Lu Chang'an has always been able to find peace in the midst of chaos. And also agreed with Qin Yinan's choice of residence. I am very poor, so of course I don't have the freedom to choose as others do. Zhu Huntang also ran to the edge and took a look, raised the corners of his mouth slightly, showed a sarcastic smile, and then ran back. Ma Weiming is here again. It's really a toad that wants to eat swan meat. He doesn't even look in the mirror. He actually wants to target our little princess of the Qin family. Zhu Huntang looked at Lu Chang'an. Although I thought before he is a talent, but now I think he is too tacky. Ma Weiming's company raised us $350 million in the D1 round. This was led by your Zhu family. Are you not slapping yourself in the face by saying this? Qin Yinan said with a smile. Junxia is considered a new first-tier city, but venture capital investment there are not many influential figures in finance and other high-profile fields. Ma Weiming is one of them. He is also one of the few outstanding male figures that Zhu Huntang has known since he came to Junxia. When Qin Yan'an came to Junxia and said that her family had arranged a blind date, Zhu Huntang mentioned Ma Weiming and thought that he might be included in the blind date by the Qin family. Now she doesn't know why she doesn't like Ma Weiming again. Business is business, not the same thing, Zhu Huntang said matter-of-factly. Let's drink tea. Qin Yan'an frowned slightly. It feels like if you stay in Junxia for a year, you will really gain weight and have nothing to do and make desserts and snacks every day. Lu Chang'an said to Qin Yan'an, I will bring some back to Zhou Dongdong to eat. After saying that, Lu Chang'an went downstairs, brought up a carton from the restaurant, and put some macarons and desserts in it. We are talking about Ma Weiming. Zhu Huntang felt that it was impossible for men not to care about this. Lu Chang'an might indeed only regard Qin Yan'an as a junior, just like Zhu Huntang, but now that Qin Yan'an might be Yesijin, Lu Chang'an could. Don't you care? This is also an opportunity to test Lu Chang'an. If Lu Chang'an cares about Ma Weiming's pursuit of Qin Yan'an, it means that Qin Yan'an is probably Yesijin, so Lu Chang'an will care. Ma Weiming is Ma Benwei's brother. The 9 sons of Longsheng are different. Maybe he has an outstanding brother, and Ma Benwei is more ignorant. But it is said that Ma Weiming is very good to Ma Benwei and basically uses his younger brother whenever he wants. Ma Benwei. The luxury cars were all given by Ma Weiming. Qin Yan'an gave a brief introduction, and looked at Lu Chang'an like Zhu Huntang. Now he comes to Lushan Mountain every day to see the scenery, and he doesn't take the initiative to strike up conversations and knock on the door. Check out the scenery here, stay for a while and then leave. This kind of person is the most terrifying. He is patient and doesn't give people a chance to refuse, but he also makes people understand what he means and acts like he is sincere and waiting patiently. Tisk tisk, if it were an ordinary girl, I must have fallen into a trap. Zhu Huntang sighed. Fortunately, Nanan and I are fairies who look down on ordinary people. You are a fairy, but I am not. Qin Yan'an refused to be a fairy with Zhu Huntang. Of course, this did not mean that she could like ordinary people. Lu Chang installed the desserts and turned a blind eye to Qin Yan'an and Zhu Huntang's tests. Although Qin Yan'an didn't know what he was testing, he wanted to see his reaction. Zhu Huntang was of course disappointed and unwilling to give in. The next chapter will be a little later, after 12 o'clock, please. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 139. The afternoon sun is hot and being in the mountains always gives people a different feeling. It is the so-called clouds in the blue sky and water in the bottle. Qin Yan'an and Zhu Huntang were both beauties, surrounding them. After brewing cold tea, mint was added to cool the entrance. There was a cool breeze caressing his back. Lu Chang'an felt comfortable and wanted to sleep. How could he care about standing on the other side under the sun to show sincerity and patience? Ma Weiming? Qin Yan'an unbuttoned 2 buttons of her collar. Her skin was as good as snow. She lay on her back and stretched her body comfortably. Her toes were dyed with pink cardamom nail polish. She turned her head to look at Mr. Zhu, whose eyes were always turning around. Tang. Why do I think you are having some bad ideas today? Qin Yan'an asked Zhu Huntang. Zhu Huntang sat up straight, crossed his legs together, folded his hands in front of his chest, and pointed at Lu Chang'an, who had no intention to speak. Tell me, what does he look like when he chases a girl? Then you have to ask An Nuan. Zhu Huntang is really curious. Although he doesn't know the details of Lu Chang'an and An Nuan's love life, there is no need to stand under the bright sun like Ma Weiming. Are you sunbathing? How silly. I remember that it was raining that day, and he didn't even use an umbrella. He was soaked all over, so he went to the store to buy fabrics. He didn't care whether there was any suitable ones or whether they would sell him. He just came, and later it was me. Designed and cut by myself. Can a little girl handle this? Chinyanan's tone was as sweet and slightly sour as the dessert in her mouth, stimulating her taste buds. How are the clothes? Zhu Huntang was curious. Look at his cell phone. Chinyanan pointed to the cell phone Lu Chang'an put aside. She didn't look at it specifically, but when Lu Chang'an took out his cell phone and turned on the screen, he would always catch a glimpse and basically be able to tell what the screensaver was. Lu Chang'an didn't stop Zhu Huntang. Zhu Huntang took it over and pressed the phone, but it couldn't be unlocked, so he saw the screensaver wallpaper. This building number 2 of Bailong Center, wearing a cheongsam, looks almost as good as you. Zhu Huntang was shocked and a little unconvinced. Although she thought she was a fairy, she still recognized Chinyanan's appearance. It is already very rare for people to feel on par with Chinyanan. Building 2 of Bailong Center, Chinyanan looked at Zhu Huntang in confusion. That's not the point. Who is that building? No one. Chinyanan certainly knows Baojun's largest project in Junsha. Building number 2 is a little shorter, and Zhu Huntang lives in building number 1, the highest floor. She looked at Zhu Huntang suspiciously. Of course it's Lu Chang'an. Building number 1 and building number 2 are matching, Zhu Huntang said without changing his expression. Chinyanan didn't pay much attention to it. This explanation was reasonable and passable. Lu Chang'an took the phone back and said calmly, all the relationships in the world, if they don't start with a heartbeat and end with a white head, are just compromises. What do you mean? Zhu Huntang didn't understand. He is saying that all the relationships in the world, if it is not love at first sight, will be just a compromise after that, Chinyanan explained. In other words, in a situation like Ma Weiming's, you didn't fall in love with him at first sight. Even if he pursues you in the end, it's just a compromise you made, and it's still better than the relationship between Lu Chang'an and An Nuan. The realm is one level lower as long as he can stir up trouble. Zhu Huntang's thinking becomes sharper. After all, a martyr woman is also afraid of pestering a man, right? Those who eat the swan's meat will eventually be toads. After saying that, Zhu Huntang moved his buttocks, sat closer to Lu Chang'an, and observed carefully. You just eat when you have nothing to do, can't you stop your mouth? Chinyanan said angrily. Lu Chang'an has said so, why can't he start from a heartbeat, and finally lose his head, and compromise with others? Zhu Huntang sighed, it was really boring. He tried and tested again and again, but found nothing at all. Lu Chang'an still did not reveal the man's desire to possess his woman, and Chinyanan did not suspect Yesijin at all. I'm going back. The weather is too hot. Things won't taste good if they're left out for a long time. Lu Chang'an got up, went to get ice packs and thermal bags, and packed the desserts that had been packaged in the window. I'll give it to you, Zhu Huntang also said. Good to go. Chinyanan felt upset and was too lazy to move. She didn't want to be polite to them. She sat in her seat and planned to take a dip in the swimming pool later. Zhu Huntang and Lu Chang'an left together. The car didn't go very far when a purple Maserati followed. Ma Weiming lowered the window, smiled and said hello, then turned around and left in another direction. Why didn't he stop my car and ask angrily who you are? After all, you are a man who walked out of the home of the person he was pursuing. Chinyanan's residence did not invite him, a suitor who comes to report every day, to be a guest. Zhu Huntang asked strangely. Your IQ has returned to normal. Lu Chang'an felt that Zhu Huntang had just tested Chinyanan on a series of topics, and the organization had shown its super level. Although Lu Chang'an had heard it, he was not interested in participating. If Chinyanan is really in Yesijin's situation, can he find out with Zhu Huntang? Yesijin is kind-hearted, but she is not a silly and sweet person. As for her current problem, she obviously didn't use her brain much. Yes, Of course he is concerned about Qinyan's situation. He probably knows that you are Qinyan's cousin. Zhu Huntang was a little regretful. It's a pity that you are already within Nuan, otherwise you can justifiably help Qinyan and get rid of these flies. Lu Chang'an didn't say anything, and Zhu Huntang clarified the situation on his own. Therefore, many women's questions and topics did not need to be addressed at all. Their desire to talk was very strong, and whether they responded or not was not the most important thing. Lu Chang'an warned Zhu Huntang not to make any fuss about Qinyan's sleepwalking state. The reason he used was of course that Qinyan needed a doctor, not a nagging goddess to tell ghost stories. Lu Chang'an got out of the car with the dessert box. Zhu Huntang repeatedly assured that she just wanted to go to Qinyan to play for a while, and asked the driver to drive her back to Lushan Mountain. Lu Chang'an can't care about so much. He is not a person who cares about big and small things. Back in the community, Lu Chang'an saw Zhou Dongdong standing in front of Anxia's canteen with $2. Anxia took the two crumpled dollars from Zhou Dongdong and handed her a mung bean popsicle. You lick and eat it with me, okay, Zhou Dongdong happily invited Lu Chang'an. Unhygienic Lu Chang'an refused without hesitation. Zhou Dongdong sniffed, reluctantly looked at the mung bean popsicle in his hand, and gave it to Anxia. Can I exchange it for 2 sugar popsicles? Then answer and first, what is 1 plus 1, Anxia also likes to tease children. 2, Zhou Dongdong replied proudly. Would a kindergarten kid not even know this? Of course you can. Anxia gave Zhou Dongdong 2 sugar popsicles with a smile. Lu Chang'an walked back and sat under the sycamore tree. Zhou Dongdong held one in each hand, trotted behind Lu Chang'an, and handed one to Lu Chang'an. I helped my mother deliver breakfast a few more times today, and my mother rewarded me, Zhou Dongdong said ostentatiously. I may have done it. I'll give you something delicious too. Lu Chang'an opened the dessert box. Fortunately, it's not used by bad people to deceive children. Zhou Dongdong's eyes widened, and he said worriedly and thankfully, if bad people also gave me so many delicious food, I would definitely be cheated. You are very self-aware. Lu Chang'an agreed very much. Zhou Dongdong was licking the popsicle and grabbing it with his hands. Lu Chang'an opened his paw and pointed at the faucet. Zhou Dongdong handed the popsicle to Lu Chang'an, went to wash his hands, and came back holding the popsicle while eating dessert and yelling because Zhou Dongdong had never eaten such a delicious dessert. Lu Chang'an also bit the sugar popsicle gently and reached out to touch Zhou Dongdong's head. You must not really be deceived by the bad guys, otherwise, even I will be sad. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 140. Lu Chang'an finished eating the sugar popsicle, stuck the stick on the ground, and watched Zhou Dongdong eat. Although Lu Chang'an has brought a considerable part of the desserts made by Qinyan, the lives of girls like Qinyan and Zhu Huntang are always about exquisite food, and it is impossible to make many filling dishes. Lu Chang'an brought there was only so much in a box. For Zhou Dongdong, who could eat 3 bowls, there were only 2 macarons left in a short time. I'll leave it to my mother. Zhou Dongdong has never eaten such a delicious dessert, so his mother must have never eaten it either. After looking at the box he had just packed, Zhou Dongdong reached out his hand involuntarily. Zhou Dongdong quickly hid the box under the small bench so that he could not see it. Did you eat the popsicles so fast? Zhou Dongdong hadn't even finished the popsicles yet. The melted popsicles made his hands wet. He quickly licked them and taught Lu Chang'an, you can only lick the popsicles. How many can you count? Lu Chang'an remembered that he just heard Anxia test Zhou Dongdong, 1 plus 1 is equal to 1. 10. Zhou Dongdong has successfully transformed from a stupid kid who can only count from 1 to 5 to a smart kid who can count to 10. Lu Chang'an was very suspicious. Zhou Dongdong stretched out a few of his fingers, and used a ballpoint pen to write some twisted numbers on the wet fingertips. Who is this snake? 7. Where's this rotten potato? 8. It turns out that this is how you learned it? Lu Chang'an asked again, have you mastered addition and subtraction within 5? Yes. I'll make an addition within 5, and if you get it right, I'll buy you mung bean popsicles. Zhou Dongdong nodded vigorously, quickly sat on the small bench, and listened carefully to Lu Chang'an's questions. What is 2.131456 add 1.8685433 equal to? Zhou Dongdong looked at Lu Chang'an blankly. What nonsense is Brother Chang'an talking about again? Lu Chang'an laughed loudly. It's equal to 4. You stupid kid can't even add within 5. Zhou Dongdong raised his hands and looked at the numbers on his fingertips. How many of them add up to 4? Is he Zhou Dongdong, a child who never even went to kindergarten? Zhou Dongdong was very angry. You lied to me. It must be many, 100 in total. 100 is the biggest number that Zhou Dongdong thinks, because there is a very, very smart kid in the class, much smarter than Zhou Dongdong, who can count from 1 to 100. Lu Chang'an just laughed and lay down again, leaving Zhou Dongdong to sit on the small bench and look dully at the numbers written on her hands, thinking about the addition within 5 just now. Zhu Huntang returned to the top of Lushan Mountain. Qin Yinan had changed into a swimsuit and sat in the swimming pool, flipping through a book by Cai Lam. I want to come too. Zhu Huntang ran up to take a look, then ran to the cloakroom to see if there was a swimsuit that suited her. It was too reluctant. After a cursory look, Zhu Huntang walked up unhappily, stripped naked, and jumped into the swimming pool wrapped in a towel. There was no way around it. As a mature woman, Qin Yinan was plumper than Zhu Huntang in the places where fat should accumulate. She really couldn't wear it. What a waste, Zhu Huntang said dissatisfiedly when he saw Qin Yinan even wearing lace-up swimming trunks. At least I'm wearing them. I think you've lost your temper, Qin Yinan said nonchalantly. Why are you running back again and trying to test whether I'm possessed by my great-grandma? Did you see it? Zhu Huntang was slightly embarrassed, but he didn't really care. If I were my great-grandmother, I would possess you. Why would you take over my great-granddaughter's body? Do you seem stupid? Do you think you look stupid? Qin Yinan pushed Zhu Huntang. You're so rude. Does it look like Zhang Ziyi? I don't have this accent anymore, Zhu Huntang shouted, slapping her hands in the water. Forget it, she had given up completely. The only person who could imitate her would be Qin Yinan. But just as he had the idea of giving up, Zhu Huntang had an idea. Qin Yinan avoided the splash she made, threw the book on the shore to avoid getting wet, and picked up a strawberry and bit it. I suddenly thought of a question, Zhu Huntang said. That was definitely planned for a long time. Qin Yinan knew her very well. Why does Lu Chang'an seem to care so much about whether you are possessed by your great-grandma? Zhu Huntang guided Qin Yinan. First, Lu Chang'an never seemed to threaten her and strictly prohibited her from telling his secrets. Second, anyway, he didn't say anything, so Qin Yinan guessed that it was Qin Yinan's business. Why didn't I feel it? Can't I see it? He was fooled by you. He found that there was nothing surprising about me, so he showed off his skills and made mutton head meat and ate it. The corners of Qin Yinan's mouth curled up slightly. Zhu Juntang, you pig, do you think others can't see what you want to do? But as an 18-year-old boy, don't you think Lu Chang'an doesn't look like a boy of this age at all? Zhu Huntang took a banana and looked at it in concentration. He doesn't look like a boy of this age, like an 18-year-old banana. Qin Yinan took the banana over, peeled it and ate it himself. 100-years-old banana, Zhu Huntang hinted in an exaggerated and joking tone. Qin Yinan obviously did not receive this hint. She did not have Zhu Huntang's unconstrained thinking habits. He often speaks in an old-fashioned tone, often calls his elders by their first names, and often displays some illusions and skills that only old men and women know. His hobby is playing mahjong with old men and women. He likes zombies and will be disappointed when he sees them. Children. Zhu Huntang usually visits Lu Chang'an a lot, so of course he noticed a lot of details. If not for careful observation, no one would really think that there is anything important in these details. Qin Yan'an finished eating the banana and lay on the edge of the swimming pool, with her back to Zhu Huntang. Zhu Huntang swam over, gently pulled Qin Yan'an's swimming trunks with one finger, and said solemnly, "You still think he has an elusive Grandpa Zheng, but who has seen it? If this Grandpa Zheng, if it really exists, how could he be so poor? Why wouldn't Grandpa Zheng go to see old Master Qin and old Grandma Su to reminisce about the past?" "What exactly do you want to say?" Qin Yan'an opened Zhu Huntang's troublesome fingers. Zhu Huntang refused to tell her directly, lest Lu Chang'an would settle the score with her later. "One moment you doubt me, and the other you doubt Lu Chang'an. You should go to your great-grandmother. She is the one who cares about these things the most." "How could it be? If I tell my great-grandmother such an amazing secret, who knows what she will do? And my mother, if she knows such a shocking thing, she might try to arrest you and Lu Chang'an." "Let's go." Zhu Huntang shook his head. "My mother is quite courageous. You now suspect that I am my great-grandmother. You have no evidence and you think it is unlikely, so now you bring the topic to Lu Chang'an." Qin Yan'an finally understood what Zhu Huntang was trying to say with all his nonsense. "You are doubting Lu Chang'an again. Is this senior yet?" "Yes." Zhu Huntang was excited to see Qin Yan'an finally on the road.